Is this the last truck in the season for Flip That Truck? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Flip That Truck. If you're not familiar with the series, basically we started with a low dollar truck, did some modifications, sold it, flipped it, tried to work our way up, and this is the fourth truck in this season of the series. What we have here is the truck that I traded the last truck for, which was the SR5 SCX-10-2 that was originally built by Matt at the Scale Builders Guild. Now that was a good looking truck and he put a ton of detail into it, but in the end, it was a truck that I definitely knew there was value to, and it was one that I felt that was going to be best for me to just do a little bit to finish it out from where it was kind of a stripped down truck and then sell it off. And this was the truck that I ended up with after that. Now, this truck here to me is right in line with the type and the style of truck that I really, really like. The new truck that we have in front of us here is just a full custom truck built on an SCX-10 platform, but all custom tube work throughout, and then has a Lexan body kind of grafted to it. Done really well. Everything fits nicely and is done well. It's just overall a very nicely done build. The actual fabrication of the tube work on this truck is absolutely top quality. Some of the best. All the joints look really good. Everything fits well. It's very symmetric. Just overall done extremely well, something that I'm very happy to own. The style overall is right in line with trucks that I really like. And I built one that looked a lot like this in a number of ways way back in the day. And I actually made chassis templates and put them on my website for download. And this one may be based fairly similarly off of those templates. I'm not 100% sure, but if I was to guess, I would say that the templates were kind of the starting point for this possibly, but regardless, it looks really, really good. So let's get into the full specs of this truck. It does have SCX-10 frame rails underneath, and then the cage is welded solid to that, and all the panels and things like that either bolt in place. The shock mounts are part of the chassis. The bodywork is a Lexan Proline body made for a Stampede. It's a Chevy C10, and then it was actually sectioned and narrowed to get it to fit this chassis properly. The rear bed sides are separate. It's pretty easy to access under the hood. You just pull a couple of body pins and it'll hinge up, or you can completely remove it by removing one screw on each door. The interior is made mainly from styrene. It's it's pretty nicely done, fairly simple. It does have wiring running right down the middle of the dash, and we'll get to the wiring in a little bit. But just everything is finished out pretty well. The axles that are on this are Vanquish D44 axles that were originally offered on the VS410 Origin Limited, and I like the style of those axles. It's got some custom bent links in the front to help clear everything, since these axles weren't initially intended for an SCX-10. They need a little bit of work to make sure that everything clears. There is a custom fabricated Panhard mount on this to help it a little further. And that's the only thing on this truck that I think needs a little bit of work, is that Panhard mount. Right now it's single shear and it's got a spacer, and I think that I can already tell it's got a little bit of a tweak to it. But I think that that's going to be something that we can easily rebrace and just kind of beef up a little bit. And after that, I think that this thing is actually going to be just perfectly solid as far as actual performance stuff goes. A couple of other things to note though is that it does just have some random assorted links on this. They don't really match. Some of them aren't the right length. It's got threads exposed before the rod ends. So they were just put on there to work, but not the best looking. So I picked up a full set of links that I think I can get everything swapped out on this, and I'll tune around, make sure that I get everything back to about where it's at, so that the wheelbase still fits, that everything looks right, but it's just got a better finished look on the links. And then it's got mismatched drive shafts currently. It's got a wild bore up front and an MIP in the rear. So we'll swap those out too to a set of incision links. There's one more thing to get this just finished and even and polished and just closer and closer to ideal. Now, I traded this straight across for the previous SR5 build, and overall I just think that this is a truck that much more suits me, what I'm looking for. I'd like tube style buggies the best. It's just kind of the style of truck that I like. Now, the only thing is that it did not come with wheels and tires. I had to put the wheels and tires on, but it had all of the electronics in here, and the electronics that are in this truck are pretty nice. It's got a Castle Mamba X with a Castle Slate motor, and then it's got a ProTech 370 TBL servo and a Futaba receiver, so I can bind up and just drive it. Super easy. I will get into the wiring because I think the wiring is the only thing that is definitely going to need some rehashing. The suspension on this truck is actually all associated shocks. They kind of that bronzish color look pretty good. I think that these might be under the Element brand, or maybe they are under Associated. I'm not sure 100%, but a nice big bore to them. The suspension feels pretty good. It's got nice travel, nice suspension flex, real reasonable, not over exaggerated, and everything clears the body nicely. It's all been trimmed well and fits good. I threw some of the bronze Method 101s on here and some Proline crawler tires. My favorite tire, one of my favorite wheels, and I think that this bronze color really goes well with this teal and patina paint job. Removing the screws that hold the body on, we're able to lift off the front portion, and again you can see that those rear bedsides stay in place. But up front is where we can see one more of the details that I really like. This has actually got some custom designed and cut front carbon fiber shock tower, chassis braces, and a battery plate system. And I think that this was done specific for this build, or maybe it's just a kit that's offered by DS Fabworks. I see that he cuts his own carbon fiber, so that's why I'm assuming that it was done custom, but maybe it's just a design that he has and uses and reuses. But the shock mounts are all built into it. Now there's actually a ton of shock mounts. They kind of array all the way back, which is definitely more than this truck needs. It only really needs a couple in the front, so you know, nothing crazy. And for that reason, that's why I think maybe it's more of a universal set that he has. The front servo mount is a plate that he's got welded onto the chassis. It functions well, clears everything. It does mean that the drag link is shorter than the Panhard, so this truck has a little bit of bump steer. Not terrible, and if we're not gonna go too fast, it's not something we're gonna notice all that much, but maybe the one thing that isn't totally ideal. However, it does get our servo put more up front. It's going to leave us a lot more room in this electronics battery tray area that we have. There's slots in this tray so that it's got a Velcro strap up there. I plan to continue using the R-Line tattoo packs from Genzace. This one specifically is an 1800 milliamp 4S rather than the 1300 that I typically use, but this should still fit up front without much hassle at all. The one thing that I do plan to do is, and that we touched on a little bit earlier, is clean up the wiring. The wiring on this truck, definitely not 100% there. The ESC lives in the back right now in like a secondary box. There's this nice RC four-wheel drive aluminum fuel cell back there, and then there's kind of like just a secondary enclosure back here, and that's where the ESC is under. My plan is to get that ESC out of this box back here because the box looks a little out of place. Get that out, and I'm gonna try and move it up front and make sure that I have room for both my battery, the receiver, and the ESC, just all tucked up here in a nice location. I think that I can handle that. And the other bonus to that is that I'll be able to get rid of this wiring that goes down the center console area inside the interior. Help me clean that up a little bit more and make, I think, overall a big difference. Once the wiring's cleaned up, this truck should just be set. I mean, not really needing anything else, but there are things that I want to do because I just think overall this thing is done well, fits my style, the things that I like, and just I think it's gonna be the one that I feel should stay in my collection. The interior is all custom built, and it's using some Wraith-like seats, but these aren't from a Wraith. They're actually more of like a silicone construction. They're much more flexible. They don't have the same logos that a Wraith has. I actually don't know where they came from, but I think I wanna try and find what they are and replace them, because these have been, I think, repurposed or used, and they had a bunch of like cutting and trimming done on them at one point and then just put back in this build. So I think those need to be updated to something that looks, fresh and complete rather than the cut up state that they're in. Talked a little bit about what's in the back of the chassis here, including that aluminum RC four-wheel drive fuel cell and then that secondary styrene box that's placed in the back there. Alongside that, there's a scale Optima battery and a jerry can, and then we have this rear mounted radiator. I do want to get this secondary box taken out of here, put the ESC up front, and then just kind of redo this back area a little bit. I think that maybe I'm gonna get rid of the rear mounted radiator as well. I I kind of like that style in more race style cars, but I think placed right behind the seat backs like it is, actually touching, I don't think that it's a position that I really like all that much. So I'm gonna get that out of there, maybe look at relocating it or putting it lower across the backside, behind the seats and angled a little bit more, something that's maybe a little bit more reasonable. And then once I've removed some of those things, there's just gonna be some cleanup that I'm gonna have to do as far as, you know, there was shoe goo used to keep this box in place and little things like that. This truck does utilize a standard 3-gear style transmission. It's got a Vanquish housing and a Vanquish motor plate in there already, but it is open from the sides. I would like to kind of get it all enclosed and cleaned up a little bit further. Being a 3-gear transmission, things do kind of get tall and big, so it is a little bit harder to do that. Maybe we won't get all of that done, but it's something I'm gonna kind of work towards attempting to make happen. It does have a custom styrene dash and then like a custom waterfall center console made for it. The style of everything's cool and it's kind of detailed up with some decals and things like that, but it was one of the areas of this truck that I wanted to just kind of play around with, personalizing, play with some different styling cues. So I actually already started on doing a couple of things to that, and I designed a new one in CAD and then 3D printed it just for a test function at this point. So I added some kind of curved areas, and then I made like an actual race pack looking dash for it that I'll try and put some frosted Lexan behind and then do some backlighting to it. And then I actually added a much larger area in the center console here where I want to play around with using some of the Arduino type displays just for fun. There's actually some really cool ones offered that you can buy from Scale Built on Instagram. He's got some really cool ones that he offers already. And I actually have all of the stuff here to play around with that myself, just because I do like the Arduino stuff, but never really dove in and learned the whole thing. So that's a project that I've been thinking about for a long time, and maybe now is the time, especially when I've got a project that I'm kind of excited about and maybe would benefit from just adding some details. Once I'm 100% satisfied with the design, how everything goes, I'll probably resin print the dash to get rid of any of that 3D printed look of the small lines. The resin printing looks like a perfectly smooth surface, so that's what I'll go to afterwards. But for now, this one's gonna work fine, and the print quality is still good. One thing to note after putting the body back on here is there's a fairly large gap between the front of the windshield bar and the actual cowl of this body. That's something that did bother me, and I think definitely needs some work. So while I was working on the 3D printed dash, I also worked on another set of stamping templates. I drew up a design that I can make kind of a filler panel for this area. And I'll take these panels and I'll do another piece of stamped aluminum in them. Sometimes you'll find situations like that when you've got body panels on a tube buggy in the full-size world as well. So I think that this solution will be fitting and something that is still fairly scale in nature. While I'm doing the aluminum work, the side carbon fiber pieces up in the front, I think those look really good. So I don't necessarily want to cover them up, but I do want to fill in where you can see through. So I think I'm going to back these panels with some brushed aluminum in that area as well. That way you can't see through, but you still get to see those carbon fiber accents. And I'll kind of carry that up to the front where it'll actually meet up to the body area. So there won't be a gap in the front either. In the rear bed, having that open and being able to see through it, I'm fine with that. That's something that wouldn't necessarily be uncommon in a buggy, so that's not much of a concern for me. So my thoughts at this time are that this truck is one that I feel like should stay in my collection. It's one that I personally really enjoy. The style, the design, the build quality, everything. So I think my plan is going to be, I'm going to continue doing things that I personally really like to this, in the thought that this is going to stay. And that kind of means that I think what I should do is start shopping for a new base vehicle to just restart this whole series. We'll start back at the bottom and we'll go back and do this again. I had a lot of fun getting to this point in the series, working with some of those other cars was a lot of fun, finding, shopping, looking for deals and all that. So I think that's gonna be the plan again. I'm gonna start shopping, try and find that cheap deal and build it up from there. And that one will just start season 2. In the meantime, until I find the next car, this one is going to be a bit of a project. I'm gonna just kind of keep chipping away, tinkering and having some fun. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who would personally prefer having the Toyota build that we had before, but it's just a difference in style and performance and build type that I favor over the other. You guys will have to let me know your thoughts on that. Tube buggy versus the, fully customized printed stuff that was on that SR5 that Matt did. And if you guys have any interesting ideas or twists or things that we should try for the next season of Flip That Truck, absolutely throw those out there. I think the series has enough little twists and challenges as it is, but if you have ideas, absolutely love to hear them. But with that, thanks for watching this one, guys. I appreciate it. Hit the like button before you leave. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.